Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
You already know who I want to cover on this podcast. Wait, no, that doesn't work. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. That comment from Tom will maybe make more sense later, as he is already skipping ahead to what I had considered the fourth segment of the show as I planned this out for all of us.
In TV, they call that a tease, so you'll have to stay tuned to find out what the heck I'm talking about.
Or we can just get right to it, but we'll eventually get to it. What we can't do, Tom, is just keep talking about it. We've actually got to have a podcast here, so we will do that. Today was the Ohio State Defense Media Day, which meant, and I'm going to get all of these guys correct on Ohio State. I don't know that I'll do it on Alabama, but I do have it in front of me. So Ohio State today, we talked to Kerry Combs, Jonathan Cooper, Haskell Garrett, Shaun Wade, Marcus Williamson, Pete Werner, Justin Hilliard. Boom, in your face. I got that one. I got all of those correct. Alabama, we talked to Steve Sarkisian because we talked the offense. Steve Sarkisian, Mac Jones, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, John Mechie, offensive tackle Alex Leatherwood, and a player to be named later, Tom, tight end. Millard Fillmore.
Partial credit. It's actually Mallard Fillmore. Not many people know that. Yeah, Miller Forrestall, tight end. Yes. Look at you. That's so last week Ohio State person forgetting that tight ends exist.
Yes, exactly. I should have named him first, and we would just go on to talk about how you think he regrets going to Alabama when he could have gone to Ohio State.
I'm sure he's doing fine.
Okay, all right. So that is who we talked to, and as you might suspect, everybody thinks everybody is very talented. Alabama knows that Ohio State has a great defensive line and a great secondary. The linebackers are very mobile. Meanwhile, the Alabama offense features a Heisman finalist quarterback, a Heisman finalist running back, a Heisman winning receiver, and also another good receiver. And Tom, also the Joe Moore offensive line of the year offensive line. So basically, this is the best offense that this Ohio State defense has ever seen this year, without a doubt.
Ever seen this year for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Ever seen in probably quite a few years? Yeah, probably. I'm kind of scrolling back mentally right now, and it's like, the 2014 Oregon offense was pretty good, but the offensive line wasn't super fantastic. And the 2014 Alabama offense was pretty good, but Blake Sims was not good enough to make up for some of, to overcome some of the other areas. I can't think off the top of my head of a team whose offense is as talented as this all around that Ohio State has played.
No, and only if they had played last year's Alabama team, maybe would they have found a similar group. Devontae Smith won the Heisman Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Monday night.
Tuesday night. Yeah, it's a little weird. They're doing the Heisman on a Tuesday in January, virtually. Like, yeah, your excuse for not remembering who, what, where, and when that happened.
I can't do the whole hour lead up to something like that. I'm sorry, Tom. I know you're a TV person and you're from the TV world. It just doesn't do it for me.
Well, and I don't think I need to tell you how many minutes of the Heisman Trophy ceremony I watched last night, because the answer is 0.0, because as we have established, the Heisman Trophy is bad and you shouldn't care about it.
And even Devontae Smith didn't really care about it. He asked, like, hey, was it exciting? Was it hard to sleep when you got home? And he's like, I went home and I went straight to sleep. So it's probably not the same night in New York that Troy Smith had, per se, for an example,
Yeah, not doing it in person, I think, probably takes a lot of the shine off of it. And also doing it now, it's quite possibly the third most exciting thing that's going to happen within a 12-day span for Devontae Smith. I mean, I think probably winning the college football playoff semifinal over Notre Dame is probably right up there. Winning, playing at least in the national championship is probably going to be right up there. And it's like, okay, so you got to sit on Zoom for an hour. Like that's not actually that exciting. And like, I know we're all kind of doing our best right now, but like, yeah, that's not that exciting. That's not quite flying up to New York City and spending a couple days and being on all sorts of, going on the Today Show or Good Morning America or whatever, or Sports Center. It's just another Zoom. We've all spent like 10 months on Zoom now, so it's just another Zoom.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the bits of news today is that Jaylen Waddle, their other fantastic wide receiver, is back practicing. And I think too many people are just assuming he's going to play. And remember, he's coming back from, I believe, like a pretty serious ankle injury. And so there's going to be some, like that kind of guy doesn't come back and is just 100% ready to go. I was talking to one NFL scout who told me he had him rated higher, Jaylen Waddle rated higher than Devin Smith. To give you an idea of the kind of guy they lost, he was averaging over 100 yards receiving when he went down. Some of the quotes, they're pretty, like, yeah, he's getting back into it. Teammates are saying he's looking good. Nobody committal on whether or not he was going to play, and they're kind of still saying, that's up to the coaches. And I'm not even sure Steve Sarkisian went beyond, who knows. We'll see how it goes. So that's just one thing to keep in mind about the offense, as if they need another wide receiver when Devin Smith is doing so well. I did ask, because there's this matchup of Devin Smith and Shaun Wade that people are talking about. And I asked John Mechie, can anybody slow him down one-on-one? And he said no. And then he repeated himself and said no. So, Tom, that's pretty emphatic. And then if you would like to lead into your tease, feel free.
Yeah, and before we go any further, I think Waddle, that Waddle thing just reads to me like just sort of a smoke screen, just give Ohio State something else to worry about. I doubt you come in to practice less than a week before the game and then are any kind of a major factor in the game. Like maybe they run him out there for a few plays just to give Ohio State something to think about. But I have a feeling it's probably a lot more about making Ohio State waste time during practice this week.
And Kerry Crum said they would.
Yeah, and I mean you have to be prepared for it, because if you're not prepared for it and he is further along than I'm assuming he is, then you look like an idiot, and also you probably give up a big touchdown, which they obviously don't want to do. So you have to spend time paying attention to it. But it's like when people put stuff on film during games that are kind of meaningless blowouts just to give the other team more stuff to worry about. The fact that Alabama came out and talked about it so openly, if this was something they were going to spring on Ohio State as a surprise, they could have done that. There's plenty of people who don't talk about stuff during these interviews. It's not like these interviews are like wild and far-ranging and crazy. Boy, and anything can happen. You never know what anyone's going to say. It's like, no, you know exactly what people are going to say, because they're all just saying, no, you're pretty. No, you're pretty. Oh, you're so pretty. I love your hair. It's just the football equivalent of that for 5 hours. If they didn't want to talk about it, if this was something that was going to be sprung as a surprise, not every Alabama player would have talked about it. Nick Saban wouldn't have talked about it earlier in the week. Like, okay, this tells you it's probably not anything real and it's just sort of a distraction for Ohio State, but they have to, you can't take that for granted. You have to actually go out and prepare as if it's real. Shaun Wade, to go back to the very top of the show, Shaun Wade was asked, who does he want to be covering one-on-one? Who does he want to be covering in the game on Monday? He said, you already know who I want. Tony, who does he want? I didn't know. I was confused.
Well, then it was clarified. The next question was, Shaun, are you referring to Devin Smith? And Shaun said, yes.
Oh,
so, for clarification's sake.
Okay. There's a lot of gray area there.
Yes, there was.
That was about as trash talky as it got on the Ohio State side, I would say. There wasn't, you kind of had to squint a little bit, and that's maybe even, I guess that's maybe a little bit spicier than comparing Michael Penix and Trevor Lawrence last game. That was also a great moment in Shaun Wade press conference history. But yeah, this is like, you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. Like this is Shaun Wade. Shaun Wade came into this year trying to be a first round NFL draft pick. Well, if Sean Wade says, no, actually, I would prefer Seven Banks had him and I took someone else. Like that's not really the mindset you want from your cornerback. So
No.
it was one of those things. It was like, oh, that was a little spicy. And then it was like, well, what else is he going to say?
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much what everybody said. You get geared up for competition. Several of the Alabama players said, yeah, when I know we're playing the best, you tell me somebody's the best at something, I get geared up. I get excited about it. And that's precisely what Sean Wade said, except his will probably be singled out a little bit more because he basically, he said, I want Devontae Smith. And anytime you're like, I want that guy, like I want Bama, sometimes then when you get it, you don't always like, oh, you know what? Maybe I didn't want it so much. But I did appreciate how he didn't back down, but also was like, as long as I don't care what happens, just win by 1 point. It doesn't, that's all I want. Saying like, basically, yeah, I want Devontae Smith. And if he gets 15 catches and 230 yards, but we win by 1 point, I am going to be happy. And so I think there is also that little, I don't know, like a little caveat there or something. Like if things don't go well for Sean, as long as they go well for the Buckeyes, he's all in. He's fine with that.
Well, again, there's a difference between that's who I want to cover and I'm going to shut that dude down. Like those are two different things. Like you want to go against the best, you want to win the game. You're setting realistic expectations there. Like that's fine. That is not, like I said, trash talk is I'm going to cover that dude and he's not going to get a catch all night. Like that's trash talk. This was, it's probably more of a testament to the whole rest of the day on Zoom. Speaking of people who are thrilled to be on Zoom, the thrill of being on Zoom all day. That was probably more a testament to all the other stuff we didn't hear the rest of the day that sort of stood out as like, oh, that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, another interesting thing came from Alabama offensive tackle Alex Leatherwood, who was saying just a lot of good things about Ohio State. And I guess we should go back a little bit about the rumors that Ohio State or the Big Ten was maybe trying to get the game postponed. Of course, that doesn't look like it's going to happen. And the metrics to allow that to happen are pretty ridiculous. Ohio State would have to be down, to below 53 players or one quarterback or below 4 defensive linemen or have 4 defensive linemen healthy. And it's like, they're never going to get, theoretically, like knock on wood, these are such low levels that you wouldn't expect them to get to. So there's, the Twitter sphere, like, saying Ohio State's trying to get out of the game. Coaches' daughters are getting involved saying Ohio State is trying to get out of this game, or trying to postpone it because they're sick or Justin Fields isn't healthy. So with that in the background, Alex Leatherwood was talking about the Ohio State defensive line. And as I was saying earlier, he said the excitement level for the offensive line when you're playing an opponent like Ohio State goes way through the roof. And then he said a few more things. And then he said, we're going to step up to the challenge and see if they want to play football. And I hear that and I'm like, oh, that's a good one to tweet, because people can take that 1,000 different ways and all of them are good for retweets. And I'm not saying that's all I'm about. I'm just saying, I know when I heard that one, I thought, well, that's about the best thing we've heard today. And I don't think it was, and I didn't like post it in a dishonest way. I just said, ask about the Ohio State defensive line. Here is Alabama offensive tackle Alex Leatherwood, and this is what he said. And then, of course, there's a lot of quote tweeting, a lot of how dare he, and things like that. But there is still that element of, this. I mean, he's right, but also you kind of sometimes have to be careful how you say things, because there are dirtballs out there who are going to present it on Twitter as if something should be as if this is bulletin board material. Tom,
thank you, Chief Dirtball. That was yeah. It's again, like, this is probably a little bit. This stands out because of all the other stuff that didn't get said. These are two teams that are very well coached, well trained in media, I think. Nick Saban's teams are extremely tightly controlled in terms of media. Nick Saban's offensive and defensive coordinators literally don't talk to the media before championship time. Like, they we get Kerry Combs and Kevin Wilson and position coaches all year long. The Alabama equivalents do not talk to the media all year because Nick Saban has everything on lockdown, except his kid doesn't have her on lockdown or didn't last night, but they're pretty tightly controlled. So you don't get a lot of real spicy takes. And that was one where if you just read that sentence, it was like, oh, that he's challenging their manhood. And then you read the rest of the quote and it was like, I mean, sort of, kind of. It was kind of interesting. We could probably squeeze an article out of this if we wanted to, but there's, I think there is elsewhere in the world plenty of other stuff that Ohio State could use as motivation that probably would track more genuinely than that quote.
But there's an Alabama beat writer right now writing up the Sean Wade wants Devontae Smith article. So I'm only right in doing it on the Ohio State beat side of things to enrage people. Although maybe we should stop enraging people. What do you think, Tom?
Are we just talking about college football, or are we having
just
a broader
in general?
Just in general, yeah.
Maybe let's start doing that. Although one last thing that might enrage people.
Speaking of subtext,
one last thing. Talking to Miller Forrestall, the tight end, was asked, "Is Nick Saban, a funny guy?" And he said, "Nick Saban is a lot more lively and fun to be around than people believe. He thinks he's funnier than he is, but he's funny." So hopefully, Nick Saban doesn't get wind of that, or Tom, hopefully his daughter doesn't get wind of that and just goes off on this Forrestall dude. My dad is the funniest coach in America, and for you to say he's not, who do you think you are? You're just afraid of his comedy.
He is definitely, he's got more personality than you probably think. I think he could be charming when he really wants to be. There's a video of him. I can't remember who he was recruiting, but he was recruiting some fairly high profile player like 4 or 5 years ago.
Quinn Nordine?
Pretty sure it was not Quinn Nordine.
Okay.
But there's video of Nick Saban doing the cha-cha slide in some family's living room that got quickly deleted. It was posted and then quickly deleted. But so there is some personality in there. But if you've seen him do those insurance commercials where it's like the most lifeless, dead-eyed, the cue card says, "Be personable," and he's like, "Oh, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do. You're not paying me enough to be personable." So yeah, no, it's like he is the podcast Effectively Wild has this theory that no baseball player is actually funny, but because no baseball players are funny, the ones who are even just the slightest bit funny get gassed up as being like the funniest people on earth. I think college football coaches, by and large, are like that. Like there are a few standouts. Like Steve Spurrier was legitimately funny, and there are coaches who have more personality than others. But yeah, Spurrier seems like he's. I mean, you watch Nick Saban just absolutely screaming at someone with 2 minutes left in a national championship game when they're up 4 touchdowns in a team, and it's like, I know you're trying to tell me this guy's a fun person, but I don't know if this all reads like extremely fun person to hang out with.
Which commercials does which coach seem more natural and comedic? Is it the Nick Saban insurance commercials, or is it the Bill Belichick Subway commercials? Which would you say? Because they say the same thing about Bill Belichick. He's a funny guy. So what do you think based on your viewing of their commercials?
Boy, those are a very, very close comparison, because I mean, these two guys who have coached together before, who are right at the pinnacle of their profession, but who are literally some of the worst actors. I mean, the two of the most wooden performances you've ever seen. I think you have to give Saban the nod just because, like, they very clearly, the people directing the Subway commercials, like, very clearly knew exactly what they had to work with, and they knew it was not much. And so it's like, they don't have Bill Belichick monologuing. Like, Saban is talking for virtually all of the 30 seconds of that Aflac commercial. Belichick is like, he just like, there's one where I think he just looks and shakes his head at the person. It's like, all right, that is knowing what you got and making it work with what you got. Like that's fine. Like Saban trying to fake enthusiasm is not. It doesn't read real well. I have always found it deeply amusing that the Saban commercial features him explaining how one of the big selling points is you can get cash. It's like, that's you can get cash for everyday needs, huh? That's I don't know why that struck me as funny. I can't remember, but it did.
And then the duck goes, Bama.
Roll Tide.
T-Town menswear. For instance, I don't know the stores. I'm just shouting out random businesses. Crystal. There. Now we're even. Like 1-to-1. One crooked place, one non-crooked. Crystal is crooked in this example.
I have nothing to add that is either relevant or true.
I will also add allegedly. Now let's move on because now we are clear. Again, Tom, let's not incite people. Let's talk about Kerry Combs, who I thought was asked, has this been his most challenging year of coaching? And I thought the answer is really good. He said, I would say I wrote it incorrectly. So I quoted it wrong in the my rundown here. Oh, no, maybe I didn't. He said, I would say it made it the most rewarding year. So I am correct. Just everything going on. Did that make this the most challenging year? He said it was the most rewarding year. Just seeing the commitment of the players in real life every single day, doing whatever they would do, whatever they would need to do. And he said, I'm just really gratified to be around a group of kids like this who say, like, whatever it takes, coach, they will do. And so that's what this entire year has been. We know Ryan Day is in love with this team because of the way they have done this. I asked Haskell Garrett, like, how do you guys as leaders do this? And he said, like, well, as long as we got me and Coop, and especially as long as we've got me and Coop, we're all right. We'll be the Energizer Bunnies for this entire team, this entire defense. And you really got the feeling like he was serious. Like as long as me and Coop are here, everything else is fine. And from what we know, they are, because they both spoke with the media today. And I guess, Tom, as long as you got Haskell Garrett and you got Jonathan Cooper, it's everybody else just steps up and they provide the energy for everybody. And like they keep saying, like, the depth here, I think Cooper said it's like first, second, third string, whatever it is, like whoever comes in, you expect them to be right where the first string was, and there's no let down, or there's no foot off the gas there. And I know there's a lot of rumors out there, but Haskell Garrett, Jonathan Cooper are here, and they appear to be ready.
And this is one of the things we've been talking about all year, which is the depth. This is, of all the years, this is the year you have to lean on your depth more than any other year. With all the stuff that's going on and all the different ways that guys can get knocked out for the season or for a game, this is the year when you have to lean on your depth more than ever before. And this is an Ohio State team that is as well positioned to deal with that as probably just about anyone in the country. There are other teams in the Big Ten where it's like the top line talent, just the starting 11 is like, well, they're not necessarily as good as Ohio State, but they're kind of close. But if you take 3 guys off the defense for Ohio State, or 3 guys off the offense for Ohio State, or, and then an equivalent number off of Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, whatever, the drop off at those schools is going to be far greater than the drop off for Ohio State. That's just because Ohio State has, when Harry Miller was gone from the Sugar Bowl, that's a 5-star offensive lineman. Okay, he's out. So then they replace him with Matt Jones. So Matt Jones is merely a high 4-star offensive lineman, number 1 center in his class. Then Matt Jones gets hurt. Who do they replace him with? Well, the number 1 offensive lineman for the class of 2020, Paris Johnson. Like, that's the kind of depth that most teams do not have that luxury. And then Ohio State does. Ohio State has the depth virtually everywhere on the field. It is more remarkable when the depth is like, ooh, that's not super fantastic at a position like cornerback, for example, this year. And we have gone through a number of times in the past, like, all the reasons why the depth is not fantastic at cornerback. And that's the confluence of like 4 fairly unusual, weird events all happening all of the same position group. And that's what it takes for them to not have a bunch of ready to go, high 4-star, 5-star type backups waiting in the wings. And next year, they're adding a couple more top 50 kind of corners. They just got a 5-star corner commit for 2022. So even that's going to get solved relatively quickly. But right now it's an issue. But that's not the case in most places. In most cases, they always talk about that next man up thing. And next man up is generally a man whose recruiting rankings suggest he will probably do the job reasonably well.
One of those guys who had a lofty recruiting ranking was Terron Vincent, who plays behind Haskell Garrett. And Garrett was asked about how Terron Vincent is playing right now, and he said he's giving us his all. And everything Haskell Garrett or everything Terron Vincent was in high school, he's better now. But that he came in off of an injury with very little rehab and had to start playing right away. And so he's getting better as the season goes on. He's playing his best right now. But he's, we saw him bat down a pass against Clemson. He's been playing, like 25 snaps or something like that and getting more involved. And so that's one of those guys that they will need next year, but they also need him this year with the defensive line that, is going to be faced with a much stiffer running test than they had against Travis Etienne. And I know somebody on defense for the Buckeyes said, well, they're very similar backs. You have to respect them running and receiving. But yeah, you are setting up to stop the run, and you want to keep him contained. But this is going to be a much stiffer test for the Buckeyes. We'll get into it more as the game gets closer. But I chuckle a little bit at the thought that it's going to be the same. They're going to have to be much better against the run. Although if they're as good against the run as they were against Clemson, maybe that's good enough. But it's going to be a different test.
Well, they can be as good against the run as they were against Clemson and get substantially different results.
Yes.
I mean, Travis Etienne finished with 20 or 30 yards rushing. You could have that same game against Najee Harris and end up giving up 90, 100 yards rushing and still be pretty solid in the trenches, good solid linebacker play, not a whole lot of missed tackles. And you're still going to give up a lot more yards just because he's a far better back. And he is going to fall forward. He is going to drag you. He is going to do stuff that Travis Etienne just didn't do. So calibrate your expectations accordingly. But Terron Vincent is an interesting case because he is, and you mentioned he was a 5-star, and I think he might have been the number 1 defensive tackle in his class.
Number 20 player overall.
Yeah, in 2018, I believe. And he is someone who was very much like Haskell Garrett, where over the summer, we were talking about the inside of that Ohio State defensive line, and boy, they're going to have some depth issues there, and I don't know how that's going to hold up, and that might be the biggest question mark on the team. And then Tommy Togiai was fantastic all year. Haskell Garrett was fantastic all year. Haskell Garrett went from, guy who was maybe not going to be able to play for weeks and maybe months because of the shooting over the summer to All-American. Like that's about as remarkable a comeback as you can have. And Terron Vincent, same thing. We went into the year talking about Haskell Garrett and Terron Vincent as like, well, I think we might see them like 4 or 5 weeks into the season, maybe. And both of those guys, Vincent didn't come on quite as quickly as Garrett did, but both of them were huge parts of how this defense was so good and why this defense was so good. That the interior of that defensive line question mark didn't just turn into a period, it turned into an exclamation point. And that's one of the biggest positive surprises for this year's team, and one of the reasons that they are where they are right now.
Yeah, I forgot the most controversial statement of the day, which was said by Haskell Garrett when he said about the game, it will be won in the trenches, no doubt. The better front will win this game. Tom, have you ever heard such an outrageous statement by a player who has no business saying something like this?
I was so blown away with that. I was like, I don't think I've ever heard anyone suggest that ever in the history of sports. I don't know where he gets off. I don't know where. I can't imagine that's the kind of talk that Ryan Day condones within his program. Shameful.
Yeah, I almost feel like writing a letter to somebody. I don't know who.
It doesn't matter who, as long as it is a strongly worded letter. That is what matters.
Thank you, Tom. Just give me your address. I'll write one to you, and we'll just get rid of this thing. And just I just need to get it off my chest. One other thing, Lathan Ransom was a topic of discussion today. Marcus Williamson said, just basically he's a very versatile guy who has gotten better and better and wants to learn and wants to know more and wants to do more. Kerry Combs said the same thing. Sean Wade said, like he texted him one day, he's like, hey, can you just come help me out with these coverages that you played in the slot against Clemson, and let's go over those. And so they went and did that at like 6 o'clock at night in preparation for the Clemson game. And then Lathan Ransom told him afterwards, thank you so much. And Sean Wade, said basically like stuff like that goes on behind the scenes that tells you how good a player is going to be. And it's kind of what sets the great players apart from just the guys who are around. And so I guess when a freshman is playing this early, you shouldn't be surprised by his teammates saying, this guy's going to be pretty good. But when it does mesh like this and you see like a Von Bell come in at the end, Lathan Ransom getting better, getting smarter. Kerry Combs also said he had some COVID issues early on. So this guy who has been, didn't enroll early, so he didn't get a chance to miss spring like everybody else missed it, but he missed winter workouts and all of that other stuff. As a June enrollee, has his own bout with COVID and however long he had to be held out for that. And then as the season comes on, you wonder like if this would have been a perfect normal season, is he part of this everyday defense by like week 6? And then imagine how good he is in week game 14 or 15.
Well, that's a really interesting point because that was game 7. The Clemson game was game 7, which is normally about October, 14th, October 21st. That's normally a Big Ten season is just sort of starting. And then here you go. I mean, that's about when maybe Brendan White came on in 2018 and which all of a sudden was like, okay, and now maybe that makes this issue better, probably. You would think that if he had been in for a spring or had any kind of a semi-normal summer, he would have during a normal year been a mid-October, at least rotation guy, where then you get to the point where if you had enough reps at that point, then by the time you get to December, then you're, pushing, like really knocking the door for a starting job. That is something that it's huge right now because of the lack of depth in the secondary anyway. It is monster for next year. Huge for next year to have potentially another, okay, you got Williamson back, you presumably got Proctor back, you're going to have presumably Sevyn Banks back, you're going to have Cameron Brown back, you got Lathan Ransom, all of a sudden like, ta-da, that's 5 people. And then you're not relying on, someone, walking through the fog and just materializing and, oh, look, here's someone else who can be a starter. You've got 5 guys there. That's huge for this team for 2021. Obviously 2021, the 2021 season, we'll get there. We got other stuff to talk about first, but long term, that's huge. Short term, they needed someone. Like they very clearly needed someone else. And now they have someone and they have to feel pretty darn good about that.
Yeah, we'll get to 2021 later on. Tom, why don't we do like a 2021 preview on Thursday?
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. What else would we talk about? I don't know.
Justin Hilliard was asked again, like, are you sure you're not going to stay for a 7th year? And he was like, why do people keep asking me this? Even my family. And then his quote, which is maybe an all-timer, it's been an incredible journey, but I just don't know how much more I can give to Ohio State. And he didn't mean it like that's one of those things I could put on Twitter and like, the national columnist would be like, oh yes, this is what we want. Look at this. Ohio State is taking so much from him. It's just a guy who's been at Ohio State for 6 years. And who in college hasn't felt like that? When you just like, you know what? Literally, I just don't know how much more I can give to Ohio State.
The Danny Glover lethal weapon, I'm getting too old for this crap vibes were off the charts there. Like, man, I'm like, his jersey number is 47, and there are days when it feels like he's been here long enough. He might actually be 47 years old. Did he come in? Was he the same recruiting class as like Vaughn Broadnax? I think he might have been. Like, I get it. I get it, Justin. Like you're ready to move on, and he's got a pro career ahead of him all of a sudden. He's someone who I think a year ago you would have just gone, well, he's just going to be one of these really sad stories where it just so much talent and it just didn't work out because of injuries. and he stayed healthy this year, and he has really been an impact player this year, and he has a chance to go out. I mean, if he can go out with a national championship, being a contributor on that team, he came in as a 5-star prospect. His college career has very clearly not gone the way he wanted it to through no fault of his own. He had multiple bicep injuries. He had the Achilles injury. I mean, he's just had bad luck after bad luck after bad luck. If he can go out, I mean, he's already now a contributor on a team in the national championship game, was a huge part of the reason they are in the national championship game. That should feel real, real good for him. If he wins a national championship, gets drafted in the NFL, that is a remarkable story, not based on where he started, but where it was in the middle of the story. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and I remember years ago asking him, because it was probably year 3 when he was healthy again and playing on special teams, and maybe it was year 4 where he hadn't really become part of the defense, and I was asking him about taking ownership of special teams, and maybe I'd asked it in a not a demeaning way, but wouldn't you rather be doing defense? And it's he explained the importance of special teams and the ownership that he took of that, and it's just every step of the way. And he said he could have quit, and there were times he thought about it, but talking to Urban Meyer, talking to his coaches, talking to his teammates, that kept him in it, and he's thankful that he did. But he's been a guy that has been through so much, and to now see him playing this well. And although, Tom, that was not even my worst, of course, moment with Justin Hilliard, the worst being when I told him that the Michigan game was canceled, and and then all hell broke loose on Zoom when they had to shut everything down. So he is doing better. We're all doing better. I'm doing better. Tom's doing better. We're all happy. The Michigan game is so long ago. Why do you even bring it up? But to see, whether Ohio State wins or not, the dude, he makes this defense better. He makes this program better, and he's been around for a very long time. So he's put a lot in. He should be making it better at this time. He's given more than he's taken, even though I believe he is now Dr. Hilliard. So let's not forget that. But just one of those guys you root for, you're happy for, and I expect him to play very, very well on Monday.
That just reminds me of the Tommy Boy scene. Lots of people go to college for 7 years. Yeah, they're called linebackers.
Yes.
Yeah. One other thing that I thought was interesting, you mentioned earlier Shaun Wade and how he was helping out Lathan Ransom and really being a good teammate there. Mac Jones actually knew Shaun Wade from way back in the day when Mac Jones was a very lowly rated quarterback prospect. He was originally committed to Kentucky and then flipped to Alabama to sort of be the second guy in the class with Tua, but he knew him in high school. And Mac Jones said he was a quiet guy, really humble guy. He was kind of a perfectionist, but he always had my back in recruiting. Really appreciate him and his family. So, and that was Wade being a 5-star guy and number 2 cornerback prospect in the class behind Jeff Okudah, and Mac Jones being a kind of fringy 3-star guy, and and Wade kind of looking out for him and helping him in the way he can. And Randy Wade, Sean's dad, has kind of had that role where he's helped out a lot of people in recruiting. I mean, Tyreek Johnson, for example, at Ohio State, Marcus Crowley at Ohio State. Those are all guys from that Jacksonville area. But Randy Wade's had that role for a lot of people to just kind of try and help them get to where they want to be. So I just thought that was kind of a cool moment. It's one of those things that we will probably forget to talk about it or think about it during the game. But, those are people who knew each other during high school, and, now they're playing with a national championship on the line. And, it could come down to a throw from one of them. And does the other one, can the other one defend it or, stop it or intercept it, or does he give up a touchdown and lose the game? I mean, that's just kind of one of those little story angles that's always kind of interesting.
Yeah. And Shaun Wade did say he's looking forward to seeing him and playing against him. A couple of former teammates in Pete Werner and one of Alabama's I think their starting left guard, Emil Ekiyor, maybe. They played together in Indianapolis. So they're also looking forward to that. I had something else, Tom, I wanted to say, but it's probably not that important. I'm sure it's not. Was there anything else from today that we needed to touch on before we call it a day?
That was my last one. I think, this is starting to feel a little bit real.
Yeah.
It was a little odd that John Mechie, like the Alabama wide receiver, said it's kind of hard not knowing for sure if the game isn't going to happen. Whatever day happens, they'll be ready. It sure feels like the game's going to happen. I mean, unless something major changes, that game is happening Monday. So I think if people are worried about that, I know that was a big concern on Twitter.com and elsewhere on the internets on Tuesday evening. But yeah, there is right now no indication that game is not going to happen as scheduled. So I thought that's going to be one of those sort of interesting things to keep an eye on. Is Alabama really, do they believe it's really going to happen? Is that any kind of a focus issue that, are they really in the back of their heads thinking, hey, is this not going to happen? Is it going to happen later? Do we really need to be ready? Like, for as much as Ohio State has like the countdown clock thing in their facility, is Alabama in their head going, well, is that countdown clock really right? I don't know. I doubt that's the kind of thing that will swing the game, but it's just like one of those things. It's just one of those little storylines that, well, we have a lot of talking to do between now and the game time. So I guess that's one of the things we can talk about.
Tom, are you saying, because what I think I hear you saying is that Ohio State, like when you throw in a flea flicker for a random game that you never plan on using, this is something that Ohio State did just to mess with Alabama's mind. Is that what you're telling me?
Clearly. What else could I mean? Do you want to talk about Kristen Saban? We forgot to talk about Kristen Saban.
Well, we referred to her.
We did. If you're not confident to play, then say it, all caps. I call BS on the COVID cases. That's tracking well this year. They're just worried about their QB and want him to have more time to heal. If he's hurt, put in your backup. You don't see us postpone the rest of the season to wait for Waddle. Bye, all caps. Tony, in a year full of takes, that was a take. That was quite a take. She later deleted it. Then she later made her account private. Then she deleted her account. Then she restarted her account. Then she tweeted out an apology.
That was a take. That is that's just the typical practice of when something goes all to heck on your account. You lock it, you delete it, you unlock it, then you post the apology. I guess she was also like defending her statement before she deleted it for anybody coming after her. So she was very emphatic about how she felt until she apologized. And Tom, I accept her apology on behalf of Justin Fields and the Ohio State program as a whole. I'm sure it won't be an issue moving forward. And I'm sure her mentions are totally, okay, guys, let's just leave her alone. Stay out of her mentions. Remember, this is the year where we try to abstain from conflict. From now on, from today.
Starting right now. Now. Yes, now. Yes. I am quite certain. If I've been certain of one thing ever in the history of the world, it is this. If Ohio State should beat Alabama, there definitely will not be pictures of sad/angry Nick Saban walking off the field with Ohio State fans tweeting all caps "bye" period with those. That is definitely not a thing that is going to happen. So, going to be a fun, as always. It's going to be a fun day on Twitter.com.
So don't look forward to that thing that will definitely not happen.
Definitely not.
Should it happen? So I think that will do it, Tom. Let's just go ahead and call it a day before we get too deep into the preview and just give everybody too much good stuff.
before we spoil too many surprises about what's going to happen on Monday night.
Exactly. So thank you all for listening. A reminder to check out BuckeyeScoop.com, where this past couple of weeks have been pretty outrageous. There's currently a thread that was started Wednesday at 10:30 in the morning that now has over, I believe, like 110,000 views about what is currently going on at the WAC this week, and very interesting information there, and a lively conversation based on all of the views and all of the comments in there. And that's just one of the many threads where people are talking and preparing for this game. Like it's the only place you can do that, Tom. It's focused, it's contained, and it's just it's healthy, and that's what we need in America: focused, contained, healthy sports conversation. Tom, who is on the morning scoop tomorrow?
I am having Ross Fulton, who is our X's and O's guru at BuckeyeScoop.com. He's coming on. I had him on Tuesday morning show to talk about what the Ohio State offense did against Clemson and why they were so effective and what that might mean moving forward against Alabama. Thursday morning, we will be talking about the Ohio State defense and what they did that was so effective and how much that will potentially move forward against Alabama. And will that still work as the challenge gets a little tougher?
Be honest, Tom, you recorded those two shows together at the same time, didn't you?
Sadly, no. He had not he had not written the defense. He had not written the defense piece yet. So I have not even recorded the defense show yet. So yeah, that'll be I'm doing that shortly after I get off of the podcast here. So can't wait. Always a good conversation with Ross, and
it is
always come away a little smarter than when I started it.
Those are always my favorite shows as well. So thank you all for listening. Look forward to that with Tom tomorrow morning, and we will talk to you guys later.